Hi everyone, my name is Kirsten and I'm going to talk to you about the culture and medicine investigation I did on Russia. My area, Russia is one of the largest areas in the world, covering 1/8 of the land's inhabited area on Earth. In 1991, after the Soviet Union collapsed, immigration to the United States exponentially increased. And as a country, the United States continues to see an influx of diverse cultures. Interacting with a healthcare professional can be very personal for a patient and thus one of the many reasons that it's so important for health professionals to understand other cultures, beliefs, and values so they can effectively treat their patients. The cultural group I chose to investigate was Russia. I chose this culture because my boyfriend is Russian and there are many Russians in my hometown community, and they have opened up their culture to me and I have learned a lot from them. As a future medical professional and based on the areas I foresee myself working in, I do not doubt that I'll be exposed to multiple clients of Russian descent, especially in the area that I plan on living. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, there are approximately 3,152,959 Russian Americans. 409,000 of those are Russian-born. Russian was the primary language spoken in 851,174 American households according to the U.S. Census in 2007. And while there are no exact projected expectations for the Russian population in the United States, it has appeared the population has gradually increased over the last few years. The Russian-born population has fluctuated up and down since 2010 by a few hundred people, but has shown small, steady growth throughout the years. United States communities with the most residents born in Russia are Millville, Delaware, South Windham, Maine, Hartwich Port, Massachusetts, Feasterville, Pennsylvania, and there are some Russian American concentrations of Russians in Boston, the Bronx, Philadelphia, Queens, Staten Island, New Jersey, and Alaska. Many of these areas are areas where I've considered living as soon as I get my license to be a registered dietitian, which is why I thought it was important to focus on this culture. Russia is a member of the World Health Organization, also known as WHO. Thus, Russia has accepted the duty to bring their health crisis management procedures in line with WHO requirements. Current Russian procedures and rules on sanitation and epidemiological control are in line with the international health and sanitary regulations as of 2005. This was adopted by Russia without hesitation and is followed in emergency situations. Russia appears to be on board with the philosophies of the U.S. about disease prevention and health promotion. This was seen during the Ebola outbreak when Russia's foreign ministry announced it has allocated the U.S. equivalent of $3.8 million to help prepare the country and $3.95 million for research work. Russia also donated $5.2 million U.S. equivalent for humanitarian aid for West African countries that were affected the most during the outbreak. Unfortunately, there appears to be an issue with Russian healthcare systems in the form of a lack of upcoming doctors. Many primary care physicians in Russia are averaging 60 years of age, many of whom were educated in Soviet times and thus are lagging behind their Western counterparts. Because of this, it is important Russia evaluates a reform in their medical education nationwide, and they should reevaluate their medical code of ethics to meet current needs. Russians often have this persona that they are cold and mean-hearted. However, this is not the case. It is very important to understand how to communicate with someone of Russian culture. When addressing Russians, they expect polite language that represents your respect to them. Titles or surnames should be used unless invited to use first names. It is important not to be too optimistic, praise too much, be too pushy, or unable to see potential challenges, as Russians find that distrustful. They do commend people who demonstrate perseverance and commitment, and it builds their trust. Russians do not believe that fate is always positive and become suspicious of those who promise it. In order to build relationships, it is important to participate in the discussion rather than just listening. Gestures, such as pointing fingers, is held as rude by Russians. Using the hand entirely or a finger, any finger except for the index finger, is okay for pointing. When greeting Russians, a firm, strong handshake, almost bone-crushing, while maintaining direct eye contact is expected. Personal space in Russia is less than that of Western culture, averaging about 12 inches. In Russia, privacy is not common. Everyone knows their neighbors because they rarely move. Violating any of these boundaries can lead to conflict, stress, anxiety, and miscommunication for patients. In Russia, birthing mothers are expected to be stoic and are criticized for complaining or crying during labor. After birth, women stay in the hospital for approximately a week. However, at this time, fathers are only allowed to see the baby and mother through a glass window in fear of exposing the child to germs. There is also a concern that the male will be repulsed by the female birthing process. Breastfeeding is strongly encouraged amongst new mothers. Unfortunately, maternal malnutrition often leads Russian mothers to switch to formula feedings. Baby showers and celebrations before the baby is born are also seen as bad luck in Russian culture. Family celebrations are usually held approximately 40 days after the baby has come home. In Russian culture, tradition is very important, thus parenting styles are passed down through the generations. Discipline and commitment are taken very seriously by Russians. If a child signs up for a sport or music lesson and does not like it, they are expected not to quit, like in America. They are encouraged to stick to it. In Russian culture, parenting is a group activity. This follows the collectivism practice because people are socialized to view themselves as part of a larger group. On a subway, every adult will make room for a child and their mother, a perk of the Russian village. However, if a Russian grandmother, referred to as a babushka, sees your kids misbehaving, she will have no issue yelling at you about it. Another interesting fact about Russia is they take their kids out in any weather, no matter how cold, because they believe the cold air is good for the children. They don't take the cold lightly, though, and will bundle up their children to bear the cold, as compared to Americans who may just stay inside. Traditional Russian foods are very carbohydrate heavy, high in saturated fats and sodium, and low in fruits and vegetables. So while the Russian diet may provide many essential nutrients, it can often not be nutritionally adequate and may lead to nutrient deficiencies. A staple item is the borscht, a beet soup full of vegetables and meat served with sour cream and a side of bread and lard. Russians eat more fish than other cultures because under Russian Orthodox Church, because it was the only meat that was allowed during fasting. Tea is another popular drink consumed in Russian culture for its perceived benefits. Russians believe tea warms up the body, can make the body sweat to kill germs, and flushes the system. Ice hockey has been a very popular sport in Russia for a long time. A new emerging sport that has become quite popular form of exercise is boxing. A typical gym membership in Moscow costs about $3,000 per year, yet most Russians succumb to paying these prices because it is too cold to work out outside, and after working at an office desk job all day, it's important to them that they get exercise. However, more facilities are opening at more affordable prices, and Russians often go with their friends to the banya, which is a type of sauna spa experience in Russia. It's an atmosphere that brings people together and encourages communication and interaction on a common level. There is the parne room, which is a hot, wet steam room, and it is alternated with a dry heat room called the predbanik. These typically contain large, long tables and benches for people to relax and drink herbal tea at and discuss life and other ideas, and also bring health benefits. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, mental illness and suicide rates increased along with widened socioeconomic inequalities. increased mortality due to tobacco and alcohol-related diseases, rapidly increasing HIV incidence, and a decline in life expectancy. There are four main factors that are directly affecting mental health in Russia: alcoholism and tobacco smoking, internet dependence and sleep disturbances, anxiety and phobias, and noise and visual aggressiveness of the environment. To combat these issues, the government is taking measurements to restrict alcohol and tobacco, evening noise bans, and closure of landfills. Death is one of life's unique experiences, and it is so important when working in a healthcare profession that we are respectful and knowledgeable about other people's cultures as not to offend. When caring for a terminally ill patient of Russian culture, it is expected that the healthcare information is shared with a family member. Patient problems are family problems in Russian culture and are expected to be discussed by the family as an entity. In the wake of an ill patient, family members spend around-the-clock care nursing the bedside of their sick family member. This ritual is referred to as the continuous death watch. Additionally, the doctor is expected to provide any medical news, specifically not a nurse, because the doctor is deemed the ultimate authority in their medical situation. News, especially if bad, is preferred to be given to the patient gradually over time to the patient. Family members are expected not to grieve in front of the patient to allow the ill patient to freely express their grief. As a result, Russians may show cheerfulness, happiness, and especially around a terminally ill patient to prevent distressing them. For Russians, especially Russian Jews, nutrition is a very important sign of health. Thus, if a patient is eating, the family is typically pleased. Oftentimes, Russian patients want to understand the etiology of their illness and may do research themselves to self-diagnose. Orthodox Russians may decline cremation, organ donation, withholding or withdrawing treatment, and signing durable power of attorney. However, if an autopsy is ordered by a doctor, it is generally accepted. A religious practice ritual of Russian culture is the Great Lent. This is about a 45-day fast where those who practice take out all animal products from their diet, often removing sugar, dairy, and any other meat products. They cease smoking, alcohol consumption, and even sex. The goal of these rituals is not to view this as a diet, but instead as a representation of restraint on the little things to symbolize their devotion. The extra time they have from not watching TV or eating is supposed to be spent worshiping or helping others. Young children, pregnant women, and elderly are exempt from following this diet. However, this fast can be dangerous because people struggle to adjust quickly to all the healthy lifestyles, especially eating vegan, and they can become weak. Acculturation relates to the degree of adaptation that has taken place, a process in which members of one cultural group adopt the beliefs and behaviors of another group. This can be seen in Russian culture upon doctor's visits. Russians get confirmation of their illness from a physician and then try to treat their disease with their own remedies first. Russians often distrust pharmaceutical drugs and Western medication, thus trying to stay away from them if possible. To Russians, pharmaceutical drugs are more serious than traditional medications, and Russians believe herbal remedies are more effective and are longer lasting and help treating diseases. However, Russian culture follows acculturation because when the disease becomes too serious, they will revert to Western medication. Being knowledgeable about different cultures is so important, especially as other cultures begin to become more prominent in the United States. When dealing with Russian cultures as a dietitian, recognizing and appropriately treating the patient is so important. Being familiar with diet, exercise, religion, social practices, along with death and dying rituals, child rearing, and mental health perspectives, and being aware that Russians become suspicious of too much positivity is a key factor to know in the healthcare field. In conclusion, it is so important to be familiar with other cultures when working in the health field, As a future health professional, I want to know about my clients and their cultures so I can build trust with them and help them solve their issues. It is so important to accommodate others' differences and beliefs. Otherwise, our professional opinion will not be helpful if we are offering suggestions that do not correspond with the ideas of the culture.